Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Austin, Texas, is senior writer Mike Craven. Craven, some breaking news. We're recording this on a Sunday. The AP poll just dropped, and we have 5 Texas teams in the AP poll. You got that list in front of you? Let's read them out.
I do. So 5 Texas teams out of the top 25. Not great at math, but that's 20%, I believe. Texas A. Number 3, Texas A&M. Number 6, Texas Tech. Number 17, Texas. Number 22, North Texas. And number 25, Houston. Remember, I wrote a story before the season of basically this is a year we're going to break a record. No state, including Texas, have ever finished with more than 3 teams in the AP top 25 at the end of the season. I've always thought Texas would get at least 4. It'd be something to get 5, but it has been a banner year. We talked to Stephen Godfrey before the season, Cody Campbell before the season. I feel like everybody thinks that the state of Texas is going to be kind of the epicenter, kind of the capital, kind of like modern football, just because of the resources and the money and stuff. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of that so far this year.
And no bias here from the Dave Campbell's guys.
Right.
We're talking about the Texas being the epicenter, but we heard this from Godfrey, and Cody Campbell, I guess, is probably a little biased too, considering he's the Texas Tech ring bearer. But why are people saying that Texas could be the new epicenter of college football?
Because the new way to do it is money. It's not history. It's not tradition. And we've seen it with SMU when they're billionaires, Texas Tech with their billionaires. Texas has always had money. Texas A&M has always had money. Houston can tap in to that market if you can get NIL going there with guys like Mattress Mac and Tillman Fertitta. There's just money here. If San Antonio, if UTSA ever gets in with like the Holt family and the Spur, like there is just money and commerce here, and there's passion here. They're not only they're rich guys, but there's rich guys who love college football and their alma maters. And this is an opportunity to kind of jump into a new stratosphere. And like I said, we've seen SMU do it. We've seen Texas Tech do it. TCU played for a national championship in 2022. So I think it's just the economy and the passion here that those things coupled.
It's that all money for sure.
That's right.
Shout out Landman, new season tonight. Pumped. You a Landman guy?
I have not gotten onto the Landman train. I need to, though. I know enough people at this point now that are involved with that show that I now need to watch it. But I just haven't had much TV time, man. I got a 9-month-old. Yeah,
that's true for sure. But Landman is basically, do you like Billy Bob Thornton being cool?
I do.
I do love it.
Yeah, that's a good selling point.
Speaking of something that's not cool, however, Texas getting exposed by Georgia. They fall from number 10 in the poll to 10 in the CFP rankings to number 17 in the AP poll. I'm sure they'll be somewhere around there in that new poll that comes out on Tuesday. 35-10 loss, most lopsided loss of the Steve Sarkeesian era. And honestly, I had a bad feeling about this game in the week leading up, but also after A&M's miraculous comeback and Oklahoma beating Alabama. I know there's no science behind this, but it just felt like no way after the rivals had such an awesome day that Texas was going to also come out and stomp Georgia.
After the Anthony Hill interception, Texas scores their only touchdown drive, and it was like a 36-yard drive. That's how good Georgia was after that first possession that ended in a field goal. But Texas cuts it to 14-10 with 5 minutes and 27 seconds left in the game. They do not touch the ball again on offense until they are down 28-10.
Kirby Smart masterclass.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, there are levels to this, and Kirby Smart has reminded us over the last 3 matchups with Steve Sarkeesian that he's a level above. I think they're a level above in roster construction. They're a level above in coaching. They're a level above in scheme. They're a level above in execution, which probably kind of lends itself to coaching. They out physical Texas. And when Steve Sarkeesian inherited this Longhorn program, task number 1 was to fix the offensive line and get this program ready to handle the physicality of the SEC. And it felt like they did that with the old guard, with the group that they inherited and the young guys that they brought in. Like, it felt in 23 and in 24, they were able to go on the road to Alabama. They walked into the SEC, made the SEC championship game. The team we saw yesterday was not physically up to the task against Georgia.
Yeah, I saw this tweet from Graham Coffey, who is the co-founder, publisher at Dog Central. He said, A few Texas players had some words for a few of Georgia's players post-game. Nobody on the UGA side did much besides laugh, but I did overhear the following quote from someone in a red jersey. Bro, I just handled you for 4 quarters. The time for all that was then. What do you even say in response to that? A total own.
Texas only ran the ball 17 times.
Which is crazy because they ran it well in the first half.
And some of those were sacks, right? Like that's 3 of those are sacks. So 14 designed runs. Maybe a couple of those are Manning scrambles as well. So 43 passing attempts. And they did, you're right. They did run the ball, especially on that first drive, well. But it's, Q Wisner, 9 for 37. CJ Baxter had the 1 carry. Ryan Wingo gets a couple carries. I mean, the running backs for Texas had 10 carries for 40 yards.
Yuck.
Just not enough there. Now, some of that's game script and flow, right? You get behind in the fourth quarter and you got to start passing and throwing the rock around. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, Georgia whipped Texas and kind of proved. I think this also on a bigger picture part, there was a path for Texas to get into the CFP with 3 losses, but not one that included a 4-score loss in November.
Okay, let's unpack this a little bit. I do want to talk about the CFP, but first I want to have the Steve Sarkeesian conversation because you mentioned there are levels to this. Kirby Smart has shown he kind of owns Steve Sarkeesian. My take on that is I know there is a lot of people who will say, man, Sark really needs to give up offensive play calling duties if he's going to be the head coach going forward. I thought, aside from him abandoning the run game, he called a pretty good game. There were just crucial mistakes. Ryan Wingo dropping that 3rd down pass on the opening drive. It's a field goal instead of a touchdown. There was 3 consecutive drops on one of the drives after that too. The receivers just all around did not have a good night. The Colin Simmons offsides on 4th and 5, where it ends up leading to a touchdown. Like those are just the mistakes you can't make. And I thought for the most part there were guys open, but I do agree with you, Craven. Kirby Smart is a madman. Like them going forward on 4th and 1, up 14-10 inside their own 30-yard line or 20-yard line. I was looking at the TV like this guy is putting his nuts on the line here. And then to come out with that play call where it's like the left tackle shifts over to tight end on the opposite side, the play action rollout, it was, perfect. And then they onside kick it to just steal a possession, go up by 18 before Arch can touch the ball again. And I think that part is an indictment on Sark of how are your guys not more prepared for that onside kick, especially when they had a fake punt against y'all last year.
And it's indicative of Kirby Smart having no fear of the Texas offense. True. Even if we don't get this 4th down, they get a field goal. Even if they recover this onside kick, they get a field goal, right? Like he was going to dare Texas to drive up and down the field. And after that first drive, that was 13 plays for 59 yards. To your point, Wingo drops that pass that could have been a 1st down. Who knows how the game plays out there? You take away that drive. After that first drive, until 4 minutes and 43 left in the 4th quarter, they go. These are the number of plays in each of the drives: 3, 4, 7, 3, 1, 7, 6, 3. None of those for more than 42 yards on the drive. Like they just could not put together anything offensively. And when I'm watching it, it's a personnel deal.
I agree.
I don't think Steve Sarkeesian hasn't forgotten how to call plays. He doesn't have the dudes. Like the problem with this Texas roster happened in January when they did not attack the transfer portal and look at what A&M's done at wide receiver. Look what Texas Tech has done, waves hands to everywhere on their roster. Mm-hmm. Texas could have used a David Bailey or a Lee Hunter or a KC Concepcion or a Mario Craver. Like they don't have playmakers. They don't have enough of them. And Georgia just looked like a much better team. Like Georgia looked like a team that recruits top 5 talent every single year. Texas did not. Like who are the stars for Texas if you get past Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons?
It's a severe lack of dogs on the offense. Even that first Ryan Wingo screen pass where he trips, I saw screen grabs online, and I know take those with a grain of salt, but he had a lane there for a touchdown. And then not to mention the drop pass later, that could have been a touchdown too on that same drive. So That is also an indictment on Sark too, because it's the Kenny Dillingham approach to coaching. Like everything that happens on a field is a coaching problem and on your shoulders. Like it's on Sark for not portaling in January. If he saw in practice, they should have, but that's also Texas playing so deep into the last 2 seasons. The transfer portal window probably passed them by just a little bit, but yeah, like Xavier Worthy, AD Mitchell aren't there anymore. Kelvin Banks is not there anymore. And the guys who were backups to these stars just have not lived up to their part.
Yeah, and they developed kind of the guys they inherited, like the Christian Joneses and the Moro Ajomos and those guys. Like they made those players better. We just haven't seen that same level of development within the guys they've brought in. Mm-hmm. The Ryan Wingos of he was supposed to be like Ryan Williams and Cam Coleman. And he hasn't been. And so the offensive line along the interior, especially, has not matured. I don't think that they hit at defensive tackle. They're not going to have 2 defensive tackles drafted like they had the previous 3 years. There's no Byron Murphys and Tavondre Sweats and Keandre Coburns. Like they did okay in the portal, but they don't have a Lee Hunter. They don't have Skylar Gill Howard, right? Like, so I just think the finger pointing isn't as much Sark play calling. It's Brandon Harris, Steve Sarkeesian, just the personnel of it, and just not knowing what you had on your roster or overestimating what you had on your roster because they spent a lot of money and this isn't good enough.
Now let's have the college football playoff conversation. Are the playoff hopes done? And let me be clear, Texas doesn't deserve to be in the playoff. But I think both of us had said before, at 9-3, it could get interesting. Like I had that prediction in May that was Texas going to go 9-3 and make the playoff in the most controversial decision ever over an ACC runner-up or a Big 12 runner-up. You wrote after the Vanderbilt game, like 9-3, they're probably getting in. It's kind of a clearer path than people think. But after just getting smoked by Georgia, it might be done. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's done because of how they lost. They needed the third loss to be a classic.
For sure.
Had they lost that game 35-31 or 21-17, I think Texas drops to maybe 12 or 13 in the polls, and they're still right there. You go beat A&M and you're in. I don't see how you lose like that this late in the season and still get in the college football playoff because of how there's going to be a logjam of 10-win teams. And you have a 4-score loss in November against one of the other teams. Like, how many times do we need to see you play against this level of competition to know that it's not for you? And upsetting A&M in a rivalry game where anything can happen, I don't think, to me, is indicative of who Texas is.
I totally agree. And I was watching this game with a couple buddies who are Texas fans, and they had brought up that point of, man, if Texas doesn't play Ohio State in non-conference and they just play all Sam Houston, UTEP, and 3 directional state schools, they're right in the playoff thick of it, and they're getting punished for that Ohio State loss. And my rebuttal to that is, no, you're not in the playoff hunt because you got your doors blown off by Georgia and you lost to a trash-ass Florida team that had to fire their head coach 2 games later. Your SEC record is middle of the pack. It's not because you lost to Ohio State in the first game of the season.
And you haven't played Alabama. It's not like you also have wins against Alabama or Ole Miss to like cancel each other out. I'm with you. Like the thing keeping Texas out isn't even that Georgia lost yesterday. It's that coupled with the Florida loss. Mm-hmm. If they're 8-2 right now, they're still they're probably just like Oklahoma, right? Like 9-10, somewhere in that range. You kind of forgive them for going on the road in Athens and getting their butt kicked to Georgia. You keep piling it on. It's the looking so bad against Florida. It's the getting blown out by Georgia. It's the needing the rescues against Mississippi State and Kentucky on the road. Like, when has this Texas team outside of Red River looked like a college football playoff? They have 10 data points. 9 of them suggest they're not good enough. Only 1 of them suggests that they are. Trust the data points.
Yeah, I'm just going to have very little patience for the gripe that the Ohio State game is what kept them out of the playoff, because it's a total straw man argument to me. And part of this is, as a media member, I don't want these awesome non-conference games to go away. But I think if I'm the committee, you're right. They haven't looked like a playoff team all year. The only complete game they played is Sam Houston. They're not a good football team. Like, how many times does Texas have to tell you who they are before you accept it?
Yes, the Maya Angelou quote, right? When somebody tells you who they are, believe them. We need to start believing Texas.
Okay, that's going to set up, though, an interesting game for the Texas A&M game. And I had some friends tell me, man, if Texas loses this game and then they lost, like, is that Texas A&M game as big of a deal? Buddy, I think it's still a huge deal because it's going to be the first game at DKR. That place is going to be rocking. It's still going to have as many stakes as you want, especially after Texas A&M has a comeback for the ages against South Carolina. So they flashed that stat on the TV with Mike Elko, and it's in SEC play since 2004. Teams were 0-286 when trailing by 27-plus points. Now they're 1-286. And the conversation in the first half for me, just reading online, was like, why did A&M extend Mike Elko before this game when no one was trying to hire him away? And the game ends with, that's why, as you wrote in your post-game column, Craven.
Yeah, to me, this season has been all about Texas A&M kind of shedding their skin and kind of getting rid of that drama. They won on the road against a top 10 ranked non-conference opponent for the first time since 1979. They beat LSU for the first time on the road since 1994. They started 9-0 since first time since 92. They were 6-0 in SEC play for the first time ever. And yet there was this kind of cloud hanging over every press conference, every conversation you have with that. Mike Elko's talked about it almost every press conference. He's like, is this our weekly? Well, what about last year? Or what about the past kind of thing? And then you sign a coach to an extension and then you're down 30-3. And there is some real PTSD happening at Kyle Field because you know what happened last time you extended a coach. Right? Like now it's all falling down behind you. You're getting blown out by Shane Beamer, who's like Donald Trump after the attempt, like on the way to through the tunnel or whatever at halftime. And it's like, okay, here it goes. Here's like where Lucy pulls the ball out, because you look around college football, and when they're down 30-3, just to take you in the mind of somebody who has to write columns, you start thinking about angles. What am I going to write about here? And when they're down 30-3 and Texas still hasn't lost yet, and Oklahoma, Alabama is still yet to play, and you go, is 10-2 A&M actually in the playoff? Right? Because
I don't know.
Outside of Notre Dame, they hadn't played anybody. And so if they lose to South Carolina, they lose to Texas down the stretch, they don't make it to the SEC championship game, and then there's this backload of 10-2 teams like Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss. Like, where is A&M there?
Because they had played 7 of the bottom 8 teams in the SEC. That was the big narrative in the first half.
So at halftime, I'm like, man, am I going to have to write a column about, like, is A&M really going to be a college football playoff team if they don't beat Texas? And then everything that went wrong in the first half went right in the second half. And you saw a professionalism and a maturity and just kind of a drive and a belief that hasn't existed for most of our Texas A&M watching lives. Like that was except for like the mid 90s when they were really rolling. I don't think many of Texas A&M teams come back and win that football game.
The first half was so bad that ESPN's Joey Galloway was wondering out loud if they were tanking to not play in the SEC championship game on the halftime broadcast. Like, that's how bad it was. The only Texas A&M member who showed fight in the first half was the cop who shoved Nick Harbor in the tunnel after his touchdown. And
then they just dominated the second half, 28-0. They 371 yards to 76. South Carolina ran 4 plays in Texas A&M's territory in the second half. 4. A&M does that behind the scenes kind of deal. And so we probably will see some of Elko's halftime speech. Can't wait. Cannot wait to see what he said and how he said it to that group. I guess you could look at this as like, if you just saw the final score, it's like, oh, well, Texas only beat South Carolina by 1. How impressed should you be? Outside of going on the road and being Notre Dame, this is the most impressed I've been of Texas A&M in my college football coverage career.
They erased the 27-point deficit by 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So this was not like a last-second touchdown. Like with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they'd erased it all.
Yeah.
That's how dominant they were in the second half.
Marcel Reed played a really bad game in the first half, could have had probably 6 interceptions, and he ends up with 439 yards and 3 touchdowns. They did it without running the ball at all. 64 yards rushing, only averaged 2.2 yards a carry. The A&M offensive line, that's as bad as they've looked this year. Like they got beat by South Carolina's front 7. But Marcel Reed and that passing game and just the playmakers on the outside, Concepcion with 158, Roman Bethel with 139. And Mario Craver had a really quiet day. 1 catch for 6 yards. He had that drop and just didn't recover from it. Concepcion had a drop in the end zone, came back and had a huge second half. We didn't see much of Craver, something to monitor there. But a heck of an effort for Texas A&M. That clinches their spot in the college football playoff, and now they're just playing for the SEC championship game and in a bye.
When Mike Elko in the Notre Dame game threw that chair and it kind of spurred their, season that they're having, they're running around with the chair as like a decoration piece, kind of a symbol of their season. He must have lifted up the entire bench like the Incredible Hulk in that first half and thrown it into the stands. I mean, that's how mad he was, probably.
Yeah, just the sideline reporter on the way to halftime asked him, like, how do you go about fixing the physicality? And he goes, we'll be better. Walked off.
Dude, props to that sideline reporter. I don't know if I could have interviewed Mike Elko. I would have been terrified to interview him coming into the halftime locker room.
Yeah, Elko's a sweet guy, deep down. But yeah, I'd imagine there were a lot of four-letter words getting thrown around in that locker room. But I was super impressed with the fight. And not to pat myself on the back here, but I saw this one coming. I kept live betting Texas A&M. like it got to plus 3.5 and I bet it. Then it got to 5.5. Then it got to 6. I just kept hammering it because that South Carolina team stunk. And it feels like this A&M team is one of destiny. I don't know if they're going to win the SEC or win the national championship, but it's going to take a better team than South Carolina to topple them.
Well, I texted you after, why am I blanking on the guy from Shiner, Dalton Brooks, that had that interception, and then Casey Concepcion drops it in the end zone. They got to do a field goal. And Randy Bond has the loudest crossbar clang I've ever heard in my life. Like, it sounded like a gunshot. I texted you, they're done. They can't come back from that. And they somehow did. So yeah, I can say for all those who think Craven's just BSing right now, he was texting his live updates of how much he had doubled down on A&M as the game was going on.
I was trying to give y'all some money, but nobody tailed me there.
I was not a believer. After that is not the one issue with Texas A&M, but Randy Bond is a problem right now. That's going to come back to bite them in the playoff.
Yeah, it could. That could absolutely be kind of the Achilles heel of this football team.
Because there's been a weird scenario where he lost his job in the preseason, then their kicker got hurt, and now he's got to go back out there. But like, your confidence is shot
100%.
Your team didn't believe in you, and now they're relying on you, even though they don't believe in you. So that sucks. I feel bad for him because that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, that is a spot to watch for sure as the games get closer and closer.
All right, game with a lot less drama and intrigue. Texas Tech curb stomps UCF 48-9. This is the first time the Red Raiders have held back-to-back opponents under 10 points since 2000, which is even more reason, Mike Craven, to get Jacob Rodriguez to New York, like you had written about this week on TexasFootball.com. We saw a friend of the program, Rob Bro, pointed out that his 11 takeaways this year are the exact amount Ohio State has as an entire team. Joey McGuire doing his part, gets him a rushing touchdown, says they're talking about quarterbacks, so we put him at QB, and he got a rushing touchdown. So this man needs to be New York. He's not going to win, but when they flash those Heisman hopefuls on the screen, now more than ever, it is you are the quarterback on the best team. Like, if Julian Sayin wins this award, he's been fantastic, like 24 touchdowns, no interceptions, but Julian Sayin winning this award would be the most you are on the most stacked team award of all time.
Yeah, Julian Sayin's not the most outstanding player on his offense.
For real.
Much less in college football. And the award has always kind of been a offensive star award. It's kind of morphed into just a quarterback award for the most part, unless you're just a two-way freak like Travis Hunter or something. But I hope Rodriguez gets an invite to New York. I know he's not going to win it, but I don't know. I guess I look at the Heisman as giving it to the guy that you can't tell the story of college football about if you would exclude him. And I think Texas Tech is a big part of the 2025 college football season, and their defense is the reason that they are this big of a part of the 2025 football season. And I know David Bailey is going to be drafted higher, but Jacob Rodriguez is the face, the heartbeat, the leader of that defense, and he's putting up the numbers. 90 plus tackles, 11 turnovers forced. He scores his touchdown. He's got a defensive touchdown. He gets an interception against UCF. He's been incredible. I'm just impressed by the way this Texas Tech team has approached their week in, week out. They haven't been too up and they're just taking care of business. They're stopping people. You know, you host game day last week. It's the biggest game on campus since 2008. You win by 22 points. You got to turn around and play a UCF team in the middle of the day who's not very good. And you saw what A&M did against South Carolina, and you wonder like, oh, what? Or Ole Miss is trailing against Florida in the second half. Like, it's very easy to do, to kind of sleepwalk into you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old guys. Like, and Tech just keeps showing up. They keep playing well. They keep putting the game away. And what was nice here is you got to put Baron Morton on the side. You know, he played for the first half. Then you get him over to the sideline. You have an idle week coming up, and so he doesn't have to play for another 2 weeks. And that is very important for the future of this Texas Tech team, because with Will Hammond out, you need Baron Morton as healthy as possible.
For sure. That's really all I have from this game. Anything else on Texas Tech? I mean, it's a compliment to them how little we're going to talk about them today.
I think if they can do it again against West Virginia to close the season out, they have built a big enough cushion to where they could lose closely in the Big 12 championship and still get in as an at-large. And that is the biggest compliment you can give this football team.
I feel like Texas Tech is probably the Big 12's only at-large chance.
No doubt.
Am I correct on that? Okay.
No doubt. Maybe Utah. If like Utah gets to the Big 12 championship and they lose to Texas Tech 27-24, depending on what happens in the SEC, maybe Utah, because it does feel like the committee is pretty high on the Utes. BYU's only 2 losses would be to Tech if they were to make it to the Big 12 championship. So if that game's competitive and Tech comes out on top, maybe. But I think if you're anyone other than Tech, you have to believe that winning the conference is your only way in.
Yeah, I think Big 12 has a far greater chance than the ACC of getting 2 teams in. I think ACC is 1 team right now. Yeah. And honestly, 100%. I know I'm a egalitarian guy on here. Like, I think it's kind of annoying how the Big 12 and the ACC are getting railroaded. But there should be 1 team from the ACC. I mean, come on, guys. Like, what are y'all doing over there?
Yes, it's very bad. It's very bad.
All right. Speaking of another team with college football playoff hopes now, North Texas. They stunt on UAB 53-24. So the game, I mean, Caleb Hawkins sets the program record with 5 rushing touchdowns. The defense forces 4 turnovers. They lead the FBS with 24 in the season. But the big story for me, and you wrote about this in 10 Thoughts, Craven, is that with USF's loss, UNT probably controls its own destiny to the American Conference Championship game. But how does that affect their CFP probability? Because does the USF loss actually hurt their CFP probability?
I mean, it does in theory, but they're stacking up against James Madison. Like, it is going to be the winner of the American versus James Madison for that spot in the college football playoff. Do not believe anyone who tells you 2 G5 teams are getting in. It's
who's saying that?
I think there was this idea that Duke could win the ACC and then there'd be another G5 team, but it's just pie in the sky belief. And then Duke just got blown out by Virginia. So I think that's done and dusted. Like, it is 1 G5 team is getting in, and it's either going to be the champion of the American or James Madison. The loss to South Florida, like South Florida losing doesn't help North Texas's case, but it's Louisville lost as well. And that's James Madison's loss. I just don't, the best win for North Texas is going to be Navy on the road, and then either Tulane or Navy in a rematch in the AAC champion or the AC championship game. James Madison's best win is going to be like Old Dominion or Coastal, or I guess the Southern Miss team that Texas State just beat by 4 touchdowns or whatever it was. Like,
off a 5-game losing streak, by the way.
I just don't. I think we'll see the College Football Playoff Committee put an AC team ranked ahead of James Madison this week, and it'll set the tone of the champion of that conference is going to make it. Because if it's not North Texas, it's going to be a team that beats them. And that's going to help their case. Like they are going to have, whoever wins the American is going to have a better, probably 2 wins over James Madison. I think at the end of the day, that will become the tiebreaker.
And North Texas has the style points too, because they're second in the country with 44.4 points per game, 5th in the country with 487.8 yards per game. So they're a fun brand of football too.
Yeah. I tried to tell everybody on the Wednesday show to hammer North Texas to cover, because if they had a chance to blow out UAB, they were going to blow out UAB because they need those style points. And that was without South Florida losing. The big storyline here is North Texas now pretty much controls its own destiny to host the American Conference Championship. Remember, this is one of those conferences where the top seed team plays at home in that championship game. And that'll be Friday night. I believe that's December 6th. And if, they got the tiebreaker against Navy, I think the other tiebreaker basically comes down to who's like ranked in the highest in the college football playoff. I believe that'll be North Texas with only 1 loss, having beaten Navy. And so I think there's a real opportunity here to not only for North Texas to play in the American Conference Championship, but to host it.
All right, now it's going to get a little sad here on the podcast. We got to talk about the remaining Big 12 teams that played. Dealer's choice, Craven, TCU or Baylor, which, I mean, both are kind of the same story of their season right now. And Sonny Dykes probably not on near as hot of a seat as Dave Aranda is, but they're both like under 500 Big 12 play and in danger of this season falling off the rails.
Yeah, let's go to Waco.
Okay. Baylor gets rocked by number 13 Utah, 55-28. So they're 5-5. They play Arizona and Houston to end the season, who are combined 15-5. This season started off with Big 12 dark horse chances. That this was kind of their roster that they'd been building for. They got Sawyer Robertson back, Josh Cameron, Michael Trigg. Dave Aranda's in the second year as defensive play caller. That unit's going to look better for sure, right? And now instead they're in danger of finishing with a losing record for the 4th time in the last 6 seasons under Dave Aranda.
Utah ran the ball 43 times for 380 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's 8.8 yards a carry. A big play in the run game is considered a gain of 10 or more yards. Utah had 9 of those, 289 rushing yards on 9 of those attempts. Just gashed Baylor. They had a run of 67, of 64, of 74. Like, what are we doing? It's just an absolute abomination on that side of the ball. They're getting worse and worse. There is just nothing to really sell a fan base on right now with a defensive coach that can't get his defense in order.
Sure. So Sherman Young, who's the producer of Bussin' with the Boys, had this stat, and it's points that Baylor's 2025 opponents have scored versus Baylor and how these totals rank for the opponent's points totals versus other Power 4 teams. Auburn at 38, that's first. TCU 42, that's second. Utah 55, that's first. Cincy 41, second. Kansas State 34, third. ASU 27, first. SMU 45, first. So all of these teams are basically having their best offensive output against your defensive-minded head coach.
Yeah, I mean, Baylor was 4-2 coming off that Kansas State win, going into their idle week with a real chance to compete still in the Big 12, and they have given up 40 or more points in 3 of the last 4 games. They gave up 42 to TCU, 41 to Cincinnati, and now 55 to Utah. Next year, if you run this back, you're probably not going to have Sawyer Robertson or Bryson Washington, Josh Cameron. Michael Trigg definitely won't be back. Like the offense, at least on paper, is going to get worse unless you just hit grand slams in the transfer portal. What gives you the confidence that the defense is going to get better? They've gotten worse and worse. And it's kept them from competing in the Big 12 this year, and they are in danger of having another sub-500 season. They may not make a bowl. As you mentioned, they play Cincinnati and Houston down the stretch. Those 2 teams still playing for something. Baylor absolutely not. Bears don't have an athletic director right now. Mac Rhodes on paid leave as they kind of do an investigation on him and some stuff that's going on there. So just a lot of disarray, a lot of question marks for the Baylor football team. A win over Utah at home maybe solve some of that, and instead they get their doors absolutely blown off.
So how does this Mac Rhodes paid leave of absence while that investigation's going on, impact Aranda?
That's a great question because from what I know, the leave of absence is going to be 4 weeks. If he keeps his job, it's going to be 4 weeks. Well, a decision has to be made within those 4 weeks. Dave Aranda's buyout drops, from what I know, on December 1st. Not a ton. It's still going to be a pretty big buyout. And so what Baylor has to figure out is, one, is the athletic director, is Mack Rhoades going to be the one that makes this decision? And by this decision, I mean to either fire Aranda and or to hire the next coach. And so I think first off, you have to figure out what you're doing at athletic director, and you have T-minus 2 weeks to do that because you need to be working the phones and figuring stuff out behind the scenes as this goes. Like if Dave Aranda gets fired on December 1st, the first phone call you're making to agents can't be that afternoon. Like it needs to be starting now. And I'm sure it is, but this without your athletic director, what does that mean? And so I guess there was this idea when it first happened, it was maybe this saves Aranda's job. If they can look good down the stretch, steal a game or two, maybe a new athletic director comes in or the stuff with Rhoades blows away. And it's like, well, we'll just give it one more year to see what's going on. I don't know how you can do it. The money you're going to lose from the attendance and the lack of support is going to equal or go over the buyout. But you just have to see what the Baylor alumni, what their big donors have the stomach for, because you're going to have to ask them for $10+ million to get rid of Aranda. You're going to have to ask them for $10+ million to get a new head coach in there. And then you're going to have to ask them for $15 million to get a roster together. And so at Texas Tech, they have a guy that's going to write that check. At SMU, they got a couple guys that are going to write that check. Does Baylor have that? And in this new world of college football, this is a big crossroads moment, I think, for Baylor University. Are you going to play the game and be in the top tier of the Big 12, or are you not? We will find out over the next couple of weeks.
Vibes are bad. That sums it up. Vibes are very poor in Baylor right now.
They've been doing the shirtless helicopter. What's that called?
Tarps off.
Tarps off. Baylor tried that, and it was so bad. Within like 5 minutes, the whole section had dispersed, and nobody was doing it anymore.
Dude, they can't even do tarps off.
Well, they gave up like a 74-yard rushing touchdown right after they started doing tarps off. Like that's how bad the vibes are.
That's when you do tarps off even harder. No. That's when more guys got to go tarps off.
They got to go do something and wake. I mean, you got to get out of that stadium. I don't blame them. Leave. Like, what are you doing? What are you watching? 55. You gave up 55 points at home to Utah, and they didn't even throw the ball. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, yeah. You ever been so far up in a football game that like the coaches are trying to run out the clock and not like run up the score, but they're calling like halfback dive, and the team can't even stop that.
Yeah.
When I was at Cedar Park, we were a brand new school. Not to date myself, but we didn't have seniors, and so we didn't have a district in football. We played district and everything else, but didn't have it in football. And so our freshman and JV teams, since we didn't really have a varsity, we would play, like smaller schools varsity. So we were like a 4A school at the time. We would play like Lago Vista's varsity as freshmen. Or Thorndale's varsity as freshmen. And we were beating Lago Vista like 42-7 one time, to where like we just started kneeling the ball.
Yep.
That is what Utah could have done to Baylor. Like that is how bad, that's how big of a mismatch it was. Utah couldn't even mercy Baylor because just running a dive play ended up going for like 50 yards. Like it's embarrassing. Like it's got to stop. It just has to.
All right, TCU gets pummeled as well by number 12 BYU 44-13. It's again eerily similar to Baylor. They're now under 500 in Big 12 play. Remaining games are Houston and Cincinnati, who are combined 15-5. I mean, what did you see, Craven? Like what do you tell Horned Frogs fans here?
That was one of the worst performances of the Sonny Dykes era. It just felt lifeless. Like from the jump, it felt like TCU did not want to be there, that their season had ended last week against Iowa State and they couldn't get off the mat. And to me, that's coaching, right? It's up to your culture. It's up to your coaches to set a tone week in, week out and convince them, even if it's hard, that we still have something to play for, whether it's just pride or a better bowl trip to avoid going to Albuquerque or something. Like, there has to be some kind of carrot or the stick, right? And it just didn't feel like TCU was ready for that football game. They ran the ball 34 times for 115 yards. Josh Hoover, 10 of 23 for 183 with a couple of interceptions. I thought defensively it wasn't like awful, I guess, But when the offense is doing that, like what chance do you have? BYU scored what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on all 7 of their first 7 possessions. They scored at least a field goal. So and what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the first 6 drives were 10 plays or more. So
Lord.
Defense didn't play well. Offense didn't play well. That put the defense on the field even more with the 3 and outs and the turnovers and stuff like that. And so just a bad performance for TCU. And, I know that Dykes likes to throw around the stat of, what they've been over the last 2 years or what they've been since he first got there. But they've been a pretty bad football team in 3 of the last 4 years. And offensively, it has been rough. Like they were 9th nationally when they made it to the national championship game. They averaged 38.8 points a game. Since then, since they've hired Kendall Briles, they've been 41st, 23rd, and now currently 48th. And that is with a, experienced quarterback that was supposed to be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12, one of the better quarterbacks in the country. They just haven't gotten it done on the offensive side of the ball, and the defense didn't play well either. And you get blown out on the road against BYU.
I feel like it's kind of similar to the 90s Cowboys a bit. And like TCU didn't have they weren't like winning championships all the time under Gary Patterson, but the Cowboys fired Jimmy Johnson, who was a dictator on those Cowboys teams. And then Barry Switzer comes in. He's like the chill coach, personable, everyone's a little more relaxed. He's what they need in that year. They go win that 1 Super Bowl, and then they fall off a cliff after. TCU, similar stuff. Gary Patterson, the defensive-minded, hard-nosed, hard-ass. Sonny Dykes comes in. He's more chill. That's what that veteran team needed. They get a little more relaxed. They show a lot of fight. They win that championship, and then they fall off a cliff. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I guess my opinion on I think that they hired wrong. I think it was Kendall Briles. Like I think they got Garrett Riley goes and becomes the offensive coordinator at Clemson. Was the runner-up for the North Texas job, and Eric Morris got it. And they just did not replace that with a fantastic offensive coach. Arkansas was in that same year that TCU was 9th in scoring. Arkansas was 35th, which isn't awful. But there's just not an explosive offense. They haven't done much to help Josh Hoover. It is all on him. And when he has a bad game, TCU looks bad. They look awful. There's no changeup, right? There's no second option for that offense. It is Josh Hoover in the passing game go win it, or we got no other choice. So I don't know what the solution here is. I don't think Sonny Dykes is like on the hot seat himself. Like it would shock me if Dykes isn't there for 2026. But I do think he needs to look at a new offensive line coach. I do think he needs to think about a new offensive coordinator, strength and conditioning, just the way they get bullied by some of these big teams. Maybe Kaz isn't the right guy. I would get rid of all the old Baylor guys. Like, I don't know why they're there in the first place. I would get rid of all. That's where I would start. I would get rid of all that because it always felt to me, and I remember having this conversation when it happened. All the goodwill they built in 2022, they wasted it by getting blown out by Georgia, getting beat by Colorado, and hiring a bunch of Baylor assistant coaches that nobody at TCU liked in the fan base. And it's very easy to start pointing fingers as soon as it doesn't work. And, just scrolling on social media, which maybe isn't the greatest indicator of what a fan base thinks, but I think it's a pretty good one. They're over what the offense looks like. And I think if Sonny doesn't make any moves, it's going to be his head on the chopping block after next year.
I totally agree with you because especially with how crazy this coaching carousel is, you probably want to keep Dykes for this next year. But next year is like, all right, like it's time to prove something here.
And you got 3 years. I think Andy Avalos is a fine defensive coordinator.
Yeah, he's good. He's solid.
It's the offensive side of the ball. Because like when you hire Sonny Dykes, like he had Rhett Lashley at SMU. He has Garrett Riley his first year at TCU, and then he's got Kendall Briles.
Like one of these things is not like the other.
Exactly. And you have 3 seasons to know that now. Like I know y'all are pals, and I know how much coaching is about brotherhood and friendships and all that kind of stuff, but they need to hit the portal hard, and they need a new thought process on offense.
You mentioned how Dykes likes to bring up they're the winningest team in the Big 12. since he got there because of that 2022 season. So Steven Johnson of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, who does great work, Steven's friend of the program, he hit him with this stat. TCU is 20-15 since 2023. What would you say to fans that may be growing anxious about the direction of the program? And this is what Sonny had to say. I can also sit here and say we're whatever we are in the last 13 games, which is 9-4. But he didn't say that, which 9-4 is also like, all right, like we're going to have a parade about 9-4. Or I could sit here and say we are what we are. Long pause. People say what they want to say. Not super inspiring.
Yep, not super inspiring. And they could lose the last two in this season on a 4-game losing streak and be 6-6. And again, just like Baylor, where do you want to be in this college football landscape? The money would be best used to get a new offensive coordinator, get a new O-line coach, get a new strength and conditioning guy, put extra money into the roster and roll it back. Because when Sonny's had a solid roster and good coaches around him, they went to a national championship game. Like that did not happen. Like that, you do get credit for that. However, that was 3 years ago, a whole different coaching staff ago, a whole different roster ago. You have to address the roster. You have to address the coaching staff, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. So TCU looked lifeless. Texas State all of a sudden got all the life back. They trounced Southern Miss, who was ranked first in the Sun Belt West, 41-14. Where was this all season? I mean, that was a complete game.
Yeah, amazing what winning the turnover battle does for you. SMU or Texas State had, I think, 5 turnovers forced on the entire year. They get 3 against Southern Miss, and you win the turnover battle 3-0, the turnover margin 3-0. And with the offense you have, that's going to turn into a blowout. Like the defense has been the issue. The defense has played well, not just against Southern Miss. They played well in the second half in the loss a week ago to Louisiana. The comeback attempt just kind of fell short. So 6 quarters of this defense playing well. They're starting to create some turnovers, and we've talked about it. The Dexter McCoyle defense is built and centered upon creating negative plays, creating tackles for loss, creating sacks, and then creating turnovers. The turnovers are what had been missing. They finally got that against Southern Miss, and they were able to go on the road and put a butt kicking on a team that's probably going to play for the Sun Belt Championship.
Yeah, 100-yard pick 6 by Christopher Jones was awesome. I saw Zach Webb pointed this out on Twitter X that Dexter McCoyle was wearing the red vest for signaling while Bradley Dale Pavito was holding the play sheet. But Kinney said there's no change of play caller. So I think Dexter McCoyle wearing the red vest was a switch up. So that was nice eyes by Zach, but Kinney says that was nothing. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's a great observation. It's rarely nothing.
Either way, just an amazing turnaround by Texas State in this game because it was about as low in San Marcos as you could get after having a 5-game losing streak. 6 players are suspended for fighting after the game, so that's a pretty impressive showing.
Yeah, and you play. I don't have the schedule right in front of me, but you play.
I got it. It's Louisiana Monroe and South Alabama. They're both under 500 to close the year.
So, you win those 2, you finish 6-6, which is only 1 game worse than the 2 previous seasons in the regular season that were so celebrated, which not a great season. You wanted to do better in the Sun Belt on the way to the Pac-12, but it would show, I think, something about the culture and just kind of the vibes behind the scene if they get themselves off the mat. Because this could have just gone the complete other way, right? This could have just flown off the rails. To go on the road and beat a solid Southern Miss team and keep your bowl hopes alive, get to the postseason for a team like Texas State, still a big deal.
All right, UTSA wins their first conference road game since November of 2023 when they beat North Texas. They beat Charlotte yesterday 28-7. Look, man, it's not pretty, but it never is when you're exercising a demon.
Man, that was a tough watch on the because it's on ESPN Plus. So I got my main TV going. A&M's getting scared by South Carolina, and then on my little iPad, I'm watching UTSA and Charlotte set football back by 30 years. It was just brutal. UTSA has an interception in the red zone early on. They miss a field goal after running backwards and punching a guy in the face. Just absolute self-inflicted owns that game should have been 21-0 by the end of the first quarter. And instead it's 7-0 at halftime, 14-0 at the end of the third quarter. Roadrunners put up 14 points in the fourth to make it look like they dominated the game. But take away Will Henderson and his big time game as a running back, and there's just not a ton to love there. I mean, Owen McCown's final numbers look good, but the offense didn't look explosive at all through the air.
Also, Owen McCown and an offensive lineman low-key fighting after one of those penalties in the red zone. So they brushed that off, of course, just, competitors out there, but not a great visual.
No, and it's just frustration, and it's just the lack. It's all, like I said, it's just all self-inflicted. It's all just boneheaded stuff, and they keep taking turns with it. Sometimes it's the quarterback making a ridiculous decision. Sometimes it's the wide receivers with the drop. Sometimes the offensive line is doing extracurricular stuff that's costing them, or doing dumb penalty things. So it's not just one deal that you can point at to. The good news for the Roadrunners is they're back on the Alamo Dome. They play much better there. They get East Carolina and Army to finish the year 5-5. You win one of those last two, you're in a bowl game. You keep that streak going. Again, like Texas State, not the season that you wanted, but when you're a G5 program, getting to a bowl is still a big deal and something to play for.
All right, let's go to the Conference USA. Sam Houston's going streaking, baby. 2-game win streak after a 26-23 win over Delaware and former Sam Houston offensive coordinator Ryan Carty. Props to the Bearcats, man, because I had given up completely. I had it penciled in for a winless season, and they have responded very well in the last 2 games.
Yeah, hats off to Sam Houston, to that staff, to that locker room. Very easy to pack this one in. But Landon Locke has been a little bit of a gem.
Mm-hmm.
They've found, he was quarterback number 3. Hunter Watson's been out. All of a sudden, Landon Locke steps in. 16 of 38 for 213 yards isn't incredible, but he's steering the ship. He seems to have been giving them a little bit of a spark. They're playing hard. Defense has gotten better. They had 8 sacks and 10 tackles for loss.
I want to point out Freddie Autry-Lindsay, the defensive coordinator, and the job he's done too, because originally you come into the year and you're like, okay, we don't think Sam Houston's going to be good. They're probably going to score 35 to 40 points a game, but they're not going to stop anybody. And these 2 wins have been defensive and special teams wins. They forced 3 turnovers, had 8 sacks, like you mentioned. So just awesome job on the defensive side.
Yeah, absolutely awesome job on the defensive side. Delaware goes 4 of 13 on third downs, 1 of 2 on fourth down. Like I said, Sam Houston with 10 tackles for loss on Delaware running 75 plays. So just a really good effort by this defense. And we've seen it in 2023, how big ending a season with some momentum can be. And this coaching staff needed to find a silver lining. And a couple of weeks ago, I begged Sam Houston fans to give me something what are you excited about? And there wasn't anything. But now you're on a 2-game winning streak. You got Middle Tennessee coming up. You can make it a 3-game winning streak. You can win 3 out of the last 4 or go on a 4-game winning streak to close out this season. And all of a sudden there's some hope in Huntsville with Bowers getting back. You can get into the portal. All of a sudden you can kind of see it. The smoke's starting to clear a little bit. And that was vital for this coaching staff going into the offseason.
Also, shout out running back Lyndon Coco Brown, too, for his hurdle on a touchdown run. It was so clean. Looked like he was running the 110 hurdles out there.
Sweet. That was sweet.
I put him as the breakout candidate for 2 years in a row on the summer magazine. So I've been just really invested in Coco the last 2 years. So that was nice for me to see.
Yeah, it came due. They ran the ball 29 times, 139 yards, 4.8 yards a carry. They doubled up Delaware's average rush. So that was a big win. And you mentioned kind of the ties, Ryan Carty, also a KC Keeler guy who was an offensive coordinator at Sam Houston. Coaches don't like to talk about it, but I bet that one felt good for Phil Longo.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now rounding it out with UTEP, who is just inventing new ways to lose. 38-24 loss to Missouri State. You wrote about this in 10 Thoughts, but they're down 24-7. They storm back. They're only down 31-24. They're getting the ball back with 11 minutes left in the fourth. Here's the time to take the momentum. And then they have a holding before the punt to allow Missouri State to get the ball back and score and put the game out of reach.
Yeah, it wasn't a good look for Walden on the sideline. He threw down his sheet and kind of threw a little bit of a tantrum. And that to me that's the problem with UTEP right now. Like they're just not a very composed football team. Like when the moments have gotten big and when they've had these kind of crossroad in game, like this could turn UTEP's way, they have done something to ruin that. Turn the ball over, costly penalties, overreacting to a bad call that then becomes more than what it should have been. We've seen this against Jack State, some other games as well. So I think sometimes when you're losing, it becomes very easy to find new ways to lose. Just like when you're winning, like Texas A&M, you get stuff going, and all of a sudden, it's like we talk about golf a lot. There are times you're hitting a golf ball really well to where you can like close your eyes and just stroke one, and you're just in the zone. And then there's other times where it's like, I don't know if I've ever swung a golf club before. Like it feels like a foreign object in my hand. UTEP's got the yips. Like they just do. And to me, UTEP is a hard job. UTEP, I think, is the hardest job in this state. At least Sam Houston's near talent. At least Rice is near talent. UTEP's not. You're out in the middle of El Paso, like, how many, there's not many LJ Martins out there, right? And when they do happen, they go to BYU. They don't go to UTEP, right? So it is a tough job. And I'm not going to sit here and go, I don't know, 22 games into Walden's future. Like we need to draw these big conclusions, but you want steps forward. Like when Dimmel got there, they were 0-11 or 0-12 the year before, and they win one game and they don't take a step forward in year two. And that's when everybody was like, what's going on here? Right. Like Mike Bloomgren always had like they went from like 2 to 3 to 4. Like they were stacking, and it wasn't like this great rise, but it was a rise. UTEP was 3-9 last year. And you thought, man, if they can get to 5 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins, like that's an upward trajectory. They're recruiting well. They can build on that going into the Mountain West. Well, they have to win their last 2 games to beat their win record from last year and to even match their Conference USA record from last year. He is 4-10. Scotty Walden is in Conference USA since taking over. You look at the first-year programs and the young coaches and the new programs to the FBS, and a lot of them are already thriving. And I think in a conference like that, it's hard to have excuses because these other programs are passing you up.
I don't want to totally psychoanalyze here, but I mean, we love Scotty Walden's energy. I think El Paso, UTEP needed that, but with how hyper he is and wearing his heart on his sleeve, do you think that ever plays a factor in how his team loses composure on the field?
It could, especially when things aren't going well. And that's probably true. I mean, we've both been on bad teams. Like it's just hard to keep the vibes up. I think it's easier to start rolling your eyes. Like I don't think it lands as well, right? It doesn't land as well with the fan base. I'd imagine it doesn't land as well behind the scenes with the roster. Like UTEP stinks and nobody wants to hear about little progresses that nobody can see other than coaches who watch all 22 film all day. Like they want to see the results get better and they're not. And that is not a good sign for the Miners as they go into a conference that is going to be even tougher.
Mm-hmm. All right, man, that wraps it up for our Week 12 recap. Again, one of these days we're going to just start ending on a bang instead of like ending with the bummers.
We should have gone UTEP and then Sam.
Yeah, that's on me as the host. I'll take ownership for that. I'll be better next week. I had a great week of practice. I thought
you're progressing.
I'm progressing. I just didn't translate that to the field, to the StreamYard. So, but I promise the fan base there is improvement.
Yeah, we'll get back. We'll get in the lab. We'll figure it out.
Any closing thoughts on Week 12, Craven?
No, excited to see Tuesday's rankings. If Tech moves up at all with their big wins, where North Texas is in comparison to James Madison or Tulane and Navy. And if Houston sneaks into the top 25 as well, because the Cougars are kind of lying in wait. Depending on how things go down the stretch, they could have a say in this deal. They would need some help, but they're there with 8 wins, with a chance to get to 10 in year 2 under Willie Fritz. SMU back in action against Louisville next week. So I think we got 4 to 5 teams still in the CFP mix, and that's more than what we, more than what we deserve, Carter. That's
for sure. 100%. Look at us. Who would have thought, huh?
Who would have thought?
All right, for senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates. That's going to do it for the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. Signing off until Wednesday.